Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss my initial thoughts on some of the runners in the contest to replace Boris Johnson as Prime Minister and, of course, Labour's main target ahead of the next election. What quality do the Tories need to look for, and will they find them? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So I'm not going to do a video marking Johnson's time in office, really. Might be an obvious thing to do, but I can't be bothered. I'd rather just forget it happened, to be honest. The Daily Mail, though, is heartbroken. Quite spectacular to see their wailing this morning. There's no dignity. No, not our Boris. I think Nadine Dorries may have written their front page. But no, straight on to his replacement. So what are the issues that this leadership contest is going to be fought on? Well, first, it's not going to be fought on the overall direction of Brexit. Anyone thinking that this will be between a hard Brexiteer and a soft Brexiteer, forget it. The party is too tied up in their hard Brexit to move until their position is electorally toxic. Consider that not a single Tory MP voted against the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, even though there was a major rebellion building against Johnson as it had its second reading. Perfect time for any Tory MPs genuinely outraged at the idea of breaking our treaties to vote against it under the banner of piling pressure on Boris Johnson. But they didn't. So the idea that any realistic leader could take a different line to Johnson doesn't seem credible. However, they will have to have a Brexit vision. So it's not that they won't be talking about Brexit, it's not that they won't differ on Brexit. Each candidate will probably just have to pick a turd and go with it. It might be massive deregulation of what they call EU rules, even though there are no more EU rules active in Britain. It might be the idea of boosting rest of world trade, even though this was never feasible and now is way worse with higher transport costs. It might be the US trade deal, even though this isn't getting anywhere and is massively against our own interests anyway. They will have to have a Brexit vision, but it will not be one that is grounded in reality. Where there is likely to be a big difference is in economic policy. We're in the middle of a cost of living crisis. Tory MPs and party members will all be aware that this issue could cost the party victory at the next election, and they personally care about it. Contenders will need a solution, preferably one that's based on low taxes. Some may just bang on about the low taxation, but some may talk about investment, as Johnson did. Some may want to scrap the Levelling Up programme. But each leadership candidate is going to need an economic policy that is distinct from their rivals, but that would be appealing to MPs and party members alike. Two things that they are all going to have to plug is a plan to unite the party. You always need that in any political party, or because obviously as a leader falls, there's always going to be splits in any political party. You know, they need to be the one that says, I will unify the party. And they're going to need to be able to demonstrate they can appeal to the electorate. Ultimately, those are the two most important qualities, and any candidate that does not appreciate that will not win. So who might be in with a shot? Well, two names that at the time of recording this, at any rate, haven't confirmed that they will be running at all. Ben Wallace, Penny Mordaunt. Now, Ben Wallace is the party's most popular possibility, largely on the back of the fact he's been a genuinely good defence secretary. Very genuinely. I mean, there are some that will claim credit for things that they should not do. Ben Wallace, probably, absolutely. But therein lies his problem. See, ask yourself, so how did a genuinely competent cabinet minister ever find themselves in Boris Johnson's government? It's because he wasn't seen as a threat. This will most likely be either because Wallace doesn't have that much support in the parliamentary party. I don't actually think that's true. I think he does have his backers. Or it's because he doesn't have the personality to appeal to the masses. Either way, Johnson didn't feel threatened by having Wallace in his cabinet. Wallace himself is apparently considering the impact of the job on his family. He is, by all accounts, a very dedicated family man. And to be fair, the job is quite intrusive on your family life. So he may just decide not to stand, even though he would have a credible shot at it. Penny Mordaunt is one of the bookies' favourites. Now, I'm going to be honest, they must know something I don't. I don't think that she's announced that she'll stand, but she is being talked about. And, so I'll say what I know. She would probably plug her credentials in getting post-Brexit trade deals, even though she hasn't done anything in this regard. She's also outside the cabinet. She's a government minister, but outside the cabinet, which means that she isn't badly tainted by Boris Johnson. But what appeal she would have to her Tory MP colleagues or the wider party is beyond me. We don't really need someone who spends their time plugging homeopathy, quite frankly. Any positive rating she might enjoy is probably because her name is just about known, but not associated with any terrible cock-ups, like most of the cabinet. And that's the best I can say of her. But in a very poor crop of candidates, I can't say which one of them has a realistic chance of winning. Maybe she does if she decides to stand. Steve Baker is an outside chance who's announced he is standing. He's a very influential member of the RG. But it's not just Brexit he bangs on about. He's all for the hard Brexit, including tearing up our Brexit treaty. He wanted the no-deal Brexit, and he still wants the no-deal Brexit. But he's also against net zero. As Prime Minister, he would be incredibly destructive. You see, you think Boris Johnson was destructive, and of course he was. But a lot of his destruction was accidental. Steve Baker would do it on purpose. He might even destroy the Tory party. He seems to have no PR abilities, actually. I was quite heartened to see. He was interviewed yesterday, I think it was. And he talked about what he'd do if he seized power. Now, that's not my words. That's not me over-egging it. Seize power, Phil. Come on, it's going to be a democratic election. No, he said that. He said, if I seize power. Who does that? Not even trying to pretend that power is bestowed. No, it's a prize of war that must be taken by force. However, I don't think he would win. Moderates in the party, I'm sure, would be aghast at the notion of him being leader. He also is a risk in terms of his seat. Labour have a realistic chance of beating him at the next election. I'm not sure the Tories want to back a leader who could actually lose their own seat unless there were compelling reasons. Admittedly, Boris Johnson had a very tenuous hold on his seat, but they backed him for other. There was no one else to, but it would be embarrassing to, let's say they just about won a tight general election, but they lost their leader. That's embarrassing. But we must not forget he has very close links with ultra-right conservatives around the world. If he were American, he would be a prominent Republican congressman. Make no mistake. Those connections could well push him to being a credible possibility for next Prime Minister. I think he's an outside choice, but I don't think he's as unlikely as perhaps the betting odds suggest. Rishi Sunak has actually got a decent chance, surprisingly, for me. I thought he was incredibly naive politically. He should have quit the cabinet at the start of the year. North Shropshire would have given him the excuse. Boris Johnson's lost the support of Tories. He'd have avoided all the mess over the tax rises. The weak spring budget statement was an absolute disaster for him. The worst inflation and growth in the G7 could have laid the blame completely at the feet of Boris Johnson or whoever replaced him, and he'd have been outside of it. And he wouldn't have lost all that public support that he gained from furlough. That being said, the situation is not hopeless for him. He has some things in his favour. First, he's not going up against strong competition. Second, his Brexiteer credentials are strong, but he is also realistic with it. He desperately does not want a trade war with the EU. So some may see him as not being willing to risk international isolation over the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill. Third, he often talks about having a low-tax economic philosophy, which appeals to a lot of Tories. I know. He's inflicted the largest tax burden in generations, but he could try and blame that on Johnson. He could try and say, look, I argued against this, but Johnson was the boss. What am I going to do? Whereas if I was Prime Minister, I set the overall policy and I will appoint a Chancellor who is of the same mind. That being said, he won't win favour with Red Wall Tories because he's not in favour of the Levelling Up programme. He wants to cut spending and taxes. Rishi Sunak is basically Mr. Austerity. So he shouldn't be very likely to win, but you can't rule him out. If he gets onto the final ballot, he's still popular enough amongst party members, and his popularity went up as a result of his resignation. The fact that he resigned and triggered the fall of Boris Johnson, that's actually played quite well amongst a lot of Conservatives and Conservative voters. So but it may be no bad thing from my point of view as well. Because, you know, on the one hand, he probably would be a more serious Prime Minister than Boris Johnson. So possibly better for the country. But on the other hand, I don't think Labour mind coming up against him, you know. There's that US green card scandal, could easily be raked back up. You know, Sunak is the furthest thing from being an ordinary person you can imagine. He's like the wealthiest MP that's ever existed. There's plenty to attack Sunak with. Liz Truss is also standing. You know, there was a time when it was thought it would be Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak on the final ballot, and it may still be. She would ideally have liked Johnson to have stepped down much earlier because her star has been on the wane. She's not as popular as she was. But right now, she is also in that most pleasant of positions, a cabinet minister that is not, as far as the public is concerned, messed up. She can plug the Brexit trade deals she got, even though they're either just EU trade deals that she copied at the photocopier, or worse than the ones the EU has with the same countries like Japan. But she, you know, the Daily Express won't say that, so she can plug those credentials. She can take her hardline stance on the Northern Ireland Protocol. Against her is the fact that Labour wouldn't necessarily mind coming up against her either. She's not on top of her brief. Starmer would utterly destroy her every PMQs and election debate. By no means one of the thickest members of cabinet, but she's not very bright. She spends all her time on photo opportunities. She is essentially just as vain and lazy as Johnson, just perhaps not as reckless with the old scandals. She was also loyal to Johnson, so just as Rishi Sunak has earned some popularity for standing up to Boris Johnson, Liz Truss may shoot herself in the foot slightly by having remained completely loyal to Johnson. She wasn't even part of the delegation that tried to persuade Johnson to quit. She was utterly loyal to him to the end. Now, that could help her occupy the role of Johnson continuity candidate, if that would be a benefit. Another Johnson continuity candidate, however, and one I think might be with a better shout, will be Nadhim Zahawi, former Education Secretary. Now, he's a clever man, make no mistake. He showed this week how cunning and calculating he is as well. When Sunak resigned, Zahawi went to number 10 personally to demand his job. Zahawi did not publicly back Johnson after the double resignations. Several cabinet ministers, quite a few of them, went on social media to publicly back Boris Johnson. He didn't. But he didn't come out against him either. You know, he was reported to have told Johnson that either he is made Chancellor or he quits. Johnson made him Chancellor. Then, the next day, Zahawi was in the delegation telling Johnson he needed to step down. Now, that's cold, even for a Tory, that is cold. When Zahawi demanded the job of Chancellor, I couldn't work out why he was so desperate to get a job that would only last a few weeks. Now I think he do. The position gives him more gravitas. Right now, he's not well known amongst the public. There was some recent polling of, various opinion polls amongst the public for various potential successors to Boris Johnson. Nadhim Zahawi, 45% said they didn't know who he was. That's his problem. That's the problem with quite a few of them. The public don't know who they are. He needs to raise his profile, and quickly. Being made Chancellor does that. It also shows that Johnson approves of him. The Chancellor is the second most senior member of government. Right now, because Boris Johnson's a lame duck Prime Minister, he is the most powerful member of the government. Never mind the role of Deputy Prime Minister, that's largely for show. The Chancellor controls the money. So every other government department has to go to them in order to get anything done. Zahawi is standing as the candidate that will carry on Johnson's legacy, I bet, but be the sober leader who won't bring the scandals. Only there are scandals. He has a lot of dodgy business interests, past and present. There was the suggestion of some forgery involved in his business dealings 20 years ago. Labour certainly have some lines of attack. That being said, he is clever, and he would probably be on top of his brief at PMQs. I don't think he would be easy to deal with in debates. He's considered an outside chance, but someone has to win, and I can see Zahawi being in with a decent shout. Then there are the joke candidates, Tom Tugendhat, Grant Shapps, Suella Braverman. I'm not going to discuss them in detail just yet. There's plenty you can say about them because I don't think they've got any chance of advancing very far. If they somehow do manage to sneak through to the serious voting rounds of the leadership contest, I may discuss them then. For now, I don't see them being credible at all. The next leader is likely to be either Sunak, Truss or Zahawi. You can't rule out Mordaunt and Wallace, but as I say, at the time of recording this, they haven't even said they will stand. But I'd be surprised. Gove isn't standing. I'd have given him a decent shout as well, but apparently he's not standing. Dominic Raab's not standing. I mean, he would have been useless anyway. I don't know about Priti Patel, actually, that being said. When I find out more, maybe she'll crop up next week. Who knows? But those are my initial thoughts. I don't think Tory MPs want to hang about with the leadership contest. I expect to discuss this a lot next week because I think they're going to move quickly. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.